Hello, everyone. Welcome to BSC News Live. The introduction there, I think, might have been a bit glitchy, but I'm not sure. If it was, apologies, but if not, yeah, all good. Anyway, earlier in the week, we mentioned that we're going to have EverRise, or their whole sort of suite of tools on the show, and here they are. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Peter from EverRise. How are you, Peter?
I'm just fine. Thanks for having me. Love the team at BSC News, love the discussions, and super excited to dive into some issues that directly affect DeFi and blockchain as a whole.
Fantastic. Thank you firstly, thank you very, very much for being here. It is really great to have you slash EverRise on the stream. Firstly, would you be able to introduce what EverRise is and some of your tools sort of on or within your ecosystem, perhaps for those viewers that aren't too familiar with EverRise?
Absolutely. So EverRise is a blockchain technology company focused on delivering security solutions for the average user in DeFi. The RISE token itself was started in June of 2021. And since then, the community has kind of come together and figured out the why behind the token. And of course, our founder, Suresh Madnani, is in charge of building out the deliverables that are associated with EverRise. These are included, but not limited to perhaps my favorite, which is called EverRevoke. That is a free-to-use service which anybody can use by going to everrise.com/revoke and then removing all outstanding token approvals. It's a simple but critical part of your DeFi hygiene to make sure that outstanding approvals are in fact revoked at all times. And so we're proud to have delivered that to market. We have other functionalities, including EverOwn, which is a smart contract locker, which enables community voting rather than a complete renouncement of smart contracts. And there are plenty of others. There's a bridging function that we've created in order to make sure that liquidity pools can be balanced across multiple blockchains. There's a swapping function, a DApp used to migrate smart contracts from one to another. And most people might be most excited to hear about our upcoming NFT Marketplace, which will be released later this year. It's going to have a peer-to-peer functionality where users can trade NFTs straight up for each other, rather than listing for Ethereum or any particular coin, although that functionality will be available. But we're looking forward to having it be more of a social atmosphere than simply pay me for my NFT. So that's on the docket for this year, as well as other security solutions. And we're excited to continue building out what we promised when we started almost 2 years ago.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for the overview. And I do agree. EverRevoke is a very, very useful tool. I think it was probably about a month ago or so, a member of the BSC News team, I think something happened to their wallet. They had a contract there that they allowed access to. They weren't sure which one. So we literally all, logged on to EverRevoke and just revoked everything. It took me quite some time. I didn't realize that, I'd have maybe like 100 different, contracts that I'd allowed access to. Some of them, well, a lot of them with permissions to spend an unlimited amount, which often, surprises me, a little bit shocking. But yeah, it is a very, very useful tool. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more about EverRevoke and why it's important, in DeFi, and perhaps why people need to be using tools like EverRevoke? I mean, what is the purpose of it?
So when we create our own wallet, whether it's Trust Wallet or if we have cold storage or anything else, part of the wallet experience is being able to receive funds, but also to send them out and put them into a liquidity pool or interact with an NFT contract. So in order for our counterparty in these cases to have access to the funds within our wallet, there needs to be an approval that's issued so that the smart contract can interact the way it was meant to interact, which is to say it pulls BNB out of your wallet, puts it in the liquidity pool on PancakeSwap, and then sends the token back to you. Now, this is fine. This is how DeFi works, but these approvals are actually often infinite, and they are extended to whatever smart contract you've interacted with, unless and until you affirmatively revoke them. So it really is incumbent upon us to, once we open our own safe and take our BNB out of it, to lock the safe again. And the only way to do that is with a revoking DApp. And we're not the only ones. There's revoke.cash. You can do this right on the blockchain as well on BSC Scan and Etherscan. We just wanted to contribute something to the conversation such that our community at least would have a one-stop shop to revoke all of their permissions and essentially lock that back door. If you see a smart contract hack, typically what you'll also see is the main Twitter account will say revoke all of your permissions immediately to prevent that smart contract from draining your wallet. Our position is there's no need to wait for this crisis moment. Just keep your back door locked at all times and you'll be a lot safer. And yeah, Tom, it is kind of a wake-up call when you go through and you see these permissions to all these various tokens that you've left open for months, and you'll go down maybe not such a pleasant memory lane with some of your more degenerate plays. At least I have.
Yeah, it does bring back memories.
It sure does. So, I mean, anytime you've interacted with anything, typically there will be an outstanding approval. So once you go through that big effort where you revoke 100 at a time, then from there on, it'll only be, whatever you've interacted with since that first step of revocation. So again, I don't care which one you use. We like ours at everrise.com/revoke, but there's revoke.cash, there's the block explorer itself, and a few others. So just stay safe out there, everybody.
Indeed. Yeah. And what was another wake-up call for me that I mentioned earlier as well is seeing that this unlimited amount. So I think this, the USDC token. So I had some USDC, and obviously during the little panic about a week ago, I swapped it. But that's the only contract that I've currently allowed access to. So here it is. And the unlimited amount, that's what always not necessarily scares me, but it is a little bit of a wake-up call. If these smart contracts, the people who own them, if they got into the wrong hands somehow, there's unlimited. They have an unlimited spend permission, which is just which could be a lot.
Indeed. It certainly is a lot if you allow it to linger. If you're just interacting and then revoking straight away, no problem. But the longer it sits in your wallet, the more surface area you give yourself that's vulnerable. And that's one of the main things we're trying to reduce, is just the vulnerabilities that pervade the space. Indeed.
Thank you. We've got a few questions from our editorial team that send us questions. So a lot of these sort of link in with what we're talking about at the moment. So one of the questions that I've got for you and the team at EverRise is new users will continue to come into Web3 and DeFi, and security will always remain the highest priority. In your opinion, how has the industry evolved with regards to DeFi security, and would you say enough is being done to protect users in the first instance?
Let's see, that's a great question. Is there enough being done to protect users? I think there's a yes answer and a no answer in there. The yes is that every day, we're all getting smarter with regards to best practices. People are learning the importance of wallet security, about revoking your permissions, about cold storage, and about being extremely careful with your digital keys and not storing them on any hackable devices. So we're all learning that personal accountability, and I think we're all talking about it a lot. And so individually, I think the people who are currently, Web3 aficionados there is enough information there. And if you are quite careful with your own personal wallet security, that's pretty safe, all things considered. Now, the no answer comes in the idea of the next wave of adoption, right? Like, if we're saying we want to kind of have DeFi replace centralized financial institutions, most people like the functionality of a bank where, they put their money in and it doesn't get stolen for whatever reason. And if there's a fraudulent transaction, then pretty much you just have to call it back and then they'll refund you that money. I think people really appreciate that security, and the FDIC in the United States does insure bank deposits up to $250,000. So people like that kind of institutional security. And the question is, like, to what extent DeFi should even seek to match it? If you see DeFi protocols that start to guarantee certain deposit amounts, and if you see them saying, even if your wallet were to be hacked, if we try to copy these institutions, I think we might lose something. First of all, it would require a massive amount of centralization in terms of ensuring the costs of these transactions. And second of all, it would be expensive to create systems that are actually acting like insurance. So that's kind of the paradox we've got. In my view, the system is fine as it is, as long as people continue to educate themselves. But we won't see that second wave of mass adoption unless and until an added layer of centralization is put on top of it. If and when someone has that iPhone moment when it comes to DeFi security, and everybody's grandma all of a sudden feels safe, the inventor of that iPhone moment is probably going to look to get billions and billions of dollars in exchange for their creation. That's fine, that's innovation. But if we really believe in decentralized finance, we've got to keep our eyes focused on who is developing this technology and seeing how they might seek to profit from it. If it ends up that everything just looks exactly like centralized banks, we have a problem. So maybe a long-winded answer to your question, but I think the most important thing to summarize it is personal accountability and the education of communities from the ground up, rather than everybody waiting for some masterstroke of technology to make everybody feel like they're in a bank again, because that's what we don't want.
Indeed. Yeah, I do agree. And I think there's aspects of DeFi within crypto that traditional finance institutions could learn from and perhaps take a leaf from, and then also vice versa. In DeFi, as you were saying, there are certain aspects within traditional finance that perhaps DeFi could take on board as well. I'm not sure I personally know of any project that calls themselves a DeFi project that is truly everything decentralized. There's always that either a front-end website, people own some of the smart contracts, so there's always that element of centralization to an extent. I mean, projects that have been shut down and the smart contract might just remain on the blockchain. Obviously, that's decentralized to an extent, but yeah, I'm not sure I really want to just interact directly on, say, BSC scan or something. This is a bit of a tricky question in a way, but in your opinion, what perhaps things can traditional finance learn from DeFi, and also vice versa? So perhaps what could DeFi learn from traditional finance, say in 10 years' time, hopefully when mass adoption has come along a bit more? What perhaps crossovers could we see maybe?
That's a really good one. And it's tough because it introduces so many questions about, I think CBDCs are kind of the linchpin of the answer to this question. There won't be that meeting of the kind of divergent systems until centralized banks are dealing with on-chain assets. In terms of what we can learn from each other, I think self-custody and the management of one's own assets is one of the master strokes of the Bitcoin white paper, and the ability to be completely in charge and eliminate fractional reserve banking, I think, is something that centralized institutions should really take to heart. We saw it just last week with Silicon Valley Bank. Turns out that, as part of restructuring, the United States government is going to be honoring those deposits. But if we don't have a world where banks are enabled to, trade hundreds of multipliers on top of the deposits they have, we're not going to wind up in these kind of crazy moments where bank runs are even a possibility. So I think one thing that DeFi can teach centralized finance for sure is that we shouldn't be out here trying to have monetary multipliers all the time. Like, sometimes enough is already, and sometimes we're stretching the supply chain and the money stream to its logical extent, such that we shouldn't be saying, okay, the moment a user deposits money into a bank, that money can automatically get loaned out to other people and put to work for other reasons. That's precisely why we see things like Silicon Valley Bank. So certainly a little bit more deliberate nature is something that DeFi can teach centralized institutions. As far as what banks can teach DeFi, I don't know. Find a way to last for hundreds of years, and then maybe you can exploit the people. Sorry, I'm just
No, very good. And I'm glad you brought up fractional reserve banking as well. I'm always in two minds about fractional reserve banking. On one hand, it's a scam. I don't see why this certain institution should just essentially be able to lend out money they do not have. Then on the other hand, the whole world, Western society, we're to an extent a debt-based society, and does it help the economy grow? Obviously, there will be pitfalls along the way, and is that due to human or individual greed or lack of regulation? I'm not really sure, but in your opinion, if you could completely eradicate fractional reserve banking, is that something like, if you're a prime minister, sorry, not prime minister, or like president or whatever it is, what would you do? I mean, what is your like more in-depth view on fractional reserve banking? Because it is an interesting thing that just doesn't exist at all in DeFi.
Well, I think it does to an extent in DeFi, and we can get to that. I don't think it's inherently bad, but I think when you aggressively centralize it and use it in the service of these massive institutions, which are clearly not focused on cost. When Citibank and JP Morgan are able to engage in fractional reserve banking, then they can multiply their assets to the point where they can afford these private jets, they can afford these fancy meals, these skyscrapers, these, bespoke suits and all the rest of it. Like, having a system of fractional reserve banking that supports excess is not productive in my view, and therefore it's kind of gotten out of hand. But if we can think of banking as a more local experience, before these conglomerates really took over, banks were, every town could have its own bank.
Yeah.
And then if you have a situation where in a town of 20,000 people who are all pooling their money into these local institutions, those local institutions can then find a way to put that work for themselves, in a responsible fashion and gain a responsible rate of return. But when you put it all together in the hands of, just a few banks, then they get excited by the number of commas in their balances, and they go ahead and they do stupid things. They go ahead and spend money on things that don't elevate every member of society. And that's why you see, New York City, London, all these financial capitals, the income inequality in these metropolises is so vast, because the banking system is supported by a balance of, trillions and trillions of dollars. So in my view, fractional reserve banking is fine when it's done responsibly. But when it's done with these massive institutions that are always seeking to maximize shareholder value, there comes, perverse incentives creep in, and then all of a sudden you're finding a way to make CEOs rich, as opposed to putting, everybody's money to work for a common cause.
Interesting. No, I do agree with you. Thank you. A comment from SB Olive. Fractional reserve models only benefit the banks and not the customer. Banks should be able to be profitable on fees alone. I agree with you to an extent, SB Olive. I mean, without fractional reserve banking, I don't know if it would be as easy perhaps to get a mortgage or something like that. There are pros and cons. It's a very rabbit hole type debate,
right?
That we could
perhaps... It's the FI part of DeFi, though, right? Like,
it is.
If there were no fractional reserve banking, then self custody would be a loan. It would be enough, rather, and it would be the same as keeping your money under your mattress. There would be no opportunity for it to interact with other systems and get to work. And that's why I think DeFi is getting there. A lot of DeFi projects are looking into lending and money markets and all the rest of it, and maybe we can get into that more later. But there is an idea that when money just sits and does nothing, it could be working on something else.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's one of our team, one of the co-founders of BSC News called Ben. He's always using yield farms and just trying to maximize his returns by not just holding tokens. He releases actually a newsletter as well. I'm just going to put the QR code up on the screen. So if anyone's interested in subscribing to one of the co-founders' newsletters about maximizing returns by, say, lending out tokens or having them in pairs, there's a QR code up there which will take you to his newsletter, which he does once a week. But I think with it, actually, I'll just leave the QR code up there a little bit longer. What's good with crypto just in general is the transparency that you can see. It's in black and white. It might take a little bit of figuring out, how to read what transactions have been where, but you can see exactly what's happening, what amount of tokens are where. But with a bank, you might have to wait for a quarterly report. Do you 100% trust this? Because, you're not actually, delving into their servers and looking at them like that or something. But that's one of the things about crypto that I think is very good. And sort of moving on with security a little bit in a same-ish but different direction. One of the things that I'm not familiar with in your ecosystem that I've only recently discovered is EverWallet, which looks like it's coming soon. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about this and what it is going to do and what it is?
Sure. So we don't have all the details on it yet, but the idea is to not simply create a fork of Trust Wallet and then put it in the App Store and say that we created a wallet. That's not what this is at all. This is the idea that every wallet, whether it's MetaMask or Trust Wallet, should have an additional layer of authentication upon it if possible. So the idea behind EverWallet, and I don't have the technical specs, is to find a way, and it's still in development, but to find a way to have it such that if and when your seed phrase is compromised, or if someone else does get access, that there's one additional layer of security such that even a hacker who has full access can't withdraw your funds without that second layer of authentication. We've already done this, by the way, with NFTs. We released a collection of RiserBot's NFTs designed by one of our dear community members, actually, named Colinari. But in addition to that, you can see it in the contract on Etherscan. There's also a function where you can lock these NFTs. And the way the NFTs are locked is by designated a secondary wallet address that you will need in order to send it from your primary wallet. In other words, if I look to send the NFT from my first wallet, it'll then say, please confirm in the second wallet. And the code for that is open source. It's on Etherscan. It's going to be similar logic that governs EverWallet, I believe. But not having our CEO here, I really can't say much more than that. But it's definitely something we're looking forward to release by the end of this year.
That's very good. Because even though a seed phrase theoretically or a private key is very secure, if someone were to get that, they're in your wallet. That's all they need. Whereas email, password, maybe that you might have two-factor authentication or something like that. So I think what you're talking about is really good. I'm very impressed, and it's needed in the space.
Yeah, I think so too. If we have to keep carrying these little sheets of paper around with us for the rest of our lives, that's not going to the first question you asked, that's not going to get grandma into DeFi. Nobody wants to write down these seed phrases and bury them in the backyard or whatever it is we do with them. So yeah, having an interface where there's that second layer where people can know that they don't, not that you shouldn't be careful, but to be able to relax that burden a little bit is something we would love to be able to deliver to the market.
Definitely. And one thing as well that you mentioned at the start of this stream is your upcoming NFT Marketplace as well. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that? And is there anywhere that we can, I can share on the screen sort of any previews or anything like that at all?
We don't have any previews yet, and we'll certainly, maybe we should finally go ahead and tease our community with those, but not currently available. But the idea is, first of all, let me say that the RISE token has kind of served as the laboratory which demonstrates the need for various solutions. So everything EverRise has built has been a result of either a community suggestion or a community need. And so when the RISE token is staked, it creates an NFT wrapper for that stake. And then the stake itself becomes almost like a derivative asset on the RISE token. So the idea that our CEO then had was that, well, there needs to be a place for this to be traded forever. We can't always rely on OpenSea or other marketplaces. We need to provide the place for people to exist. And so then the idea came to him that, element is a little bit missing from NFT marketplaces right now. NFTs, I think people just like to have them, like Pokemon cards or baseball cards or pieces of art that I want to be a part of. I don't want to think of NFTs as, vest traders to make a lot of money. I want to think of them as something that people get excited to lunch table or something. So the idea very much is to have it be a peer-to-peer experience, deals together, rather than just saying, what's the floor price today? Oh, maybe I'll sell it for point two. No, it's about, oh, user XYZ has a Bored Ape that I really have been that can put together a proposal for him that can actually make this market more efficient. So as to not create this kind of nirvana for pro traders who are excellent at skimming value out of. The idea is to create a meeting place for people to exchange digital assets in a friendly way. So the term that Suresh has come up with for this specific kind of deal is a handshake deal. Users of our Riser bots NFTs, anyone who holds a Riser bot can go and have free access deals on the upcoming NFT Marketplace. We're very excited about that functionality. There are some others that are doing similar things, but it's definitely not going to be the OpenSea experience price.
Very good. And when you say it's peer-to-peer, does that mean perhaps one user could swap an NFT directly just for another NFT with another person? And perhaps could one person swap, say, 3 common type NFTs for another person's rare NFT?
Absolutely. That's very much the idea. There doesn't need to be any native coin trading. There doesn't need to identification of particular assets, and then you put it in, and the trade is approved and it takes place. Check back in time. Are the company totally on this? I don't know what the minimum viable product is going to be, but I certainly know that NFTs straight up for each other is very much going to be part of the launch.
Very good. And how much of the peer-to-peer transaction is on chain? Because I know that there's, does it all happen on chain, or is there like an escrow front end or something to verify if both users have actually are actually doing the trade? Do they both need to send an NFT to a central place, and then a contract says, okay, yeah, I've received all these assets, now I can spit them out again, so, sort of thing?
The handshake deals that we're creating is kind of like an escrow. Don't need to send assets to the smart contract. They just need to give approval. So in one, we transfer the assets directly to each other.
Oh, good. Very good. Thank you very much. Great. And also, RiserBot NFTs, where are they? What's the biggest marketplace for them at the moment? Where do they have? I know perhaps saying where's the biggest volume isn't
right.
The best community thing to say, but where are they listed most?
Well, for us, if you want a RiserBot NFT, you can simply go to our mint site, which is, I can give it to you now, v3app.everrise.com. And then if you were to connect your wallet there, you'll see a minting function directly from EverRise itself. There is a small secondary market. You can see it on OpenSea, but if they want the RiserBots NFTs, they simply mint them directly from the company and then develop. But the one thing we at EverRise are kind of focused on is not secondary markets, because we believe the best reason to sell an NFT or to buy an NFT current value that people appreciate, and we're not trying to create these vast speculative. It's just a question of selling something that works, and in this case, the bots have the free access to the handshake deals, and they also have sensational art like Colin. So I minted a bunch of Riser bots myself because I like them, and so they're for them right now. But for the most part, if people want more, they just go directly and mint new ones.
Fantastic. Good idea. Also, I thought it was just me, but a member of the community as well just said, Peter, if you can see this, your mic is cutting in and out, either a Wi-Fi connection issue or mic connection. So what I'm just going to quickly do is just turn Peter off and then on again. I'm not sure if that would have solved it. Do you want to just say a quick hello again, Peter, just to see if that solved anything? Oh, it looks like he might have frozen. And there, okay, yeah. So it looks as though it was probably a connection issue on his end. He will be back very, very soon, I'm sure. However, I'm just going to use this opportunity very quickly just to quickly talk about our sponsor for BSC News live streams. So as you might have seen up in the top corners, there's this company called Bloxroot. They offer something called BSC Protect RPC, which is a custom RPC URL that prevents you from getting front run and also prevents sandwich attacks. You may have seen on some DEX scanners like DEX Tools or PooCoin that there might be a large buy and a sell, or a sell and a buy, sort of in between your transaction. And what that is, essentially, your trade is getting front run, and it'll use the maximum slippage that you've entered. Often, using a large amount of slippage is needed if there's lots of volatility, or if there's tax and perhaps you enter it wrong or something. So using this custom URL, all you need to do is scan the QR code just there, and you'll be taken to a page where it's just one click and it adds it to your MetaMask. Also on bsc.news, if you go on tools, we've got a custom RPC URL little page there. And again, you can just add them to your MetaMask just by one click. And I think, yeah, Peter is back. So fingers crossed. Here we are. Peter, welcome back.
Thanks. I tried to switch from Wi-Fi to data, but apparently that kicked me off as well. So hopefully the microphone issues have been resolved.
Fantastic. Yeah, it has. You're not cutting out at all. It's loud and clear, which is fantastic. Also, a few more just comments from the community. We in the audience can talk to. We are good people. Ask us questions. If you've got any questions for EverRise, put them in the comments. And I'm sure Peter, well, I want to say we'll do our best to answer, but obviously Peter would be the best person to answer these. Anyway, in your opinion, the DeFi industry, if you can call it that, or crypto in general, it's arguably not seen mass adoption yet. There are still a lot of people that just don't really know anything about crypto at all, that perhaps are anti-crypto. And I'm just going to read this off what our editors sent us in these little questions. How can the DeFi industry increase accessibility and education to attract a wider audience beyond the current crypto-savvy community? And also adding to that as well, I often look at the analytics from, say, crypto live streams, podcasts, that sort of thing, and it's often around 90% male as well. And I'm not sure if that's a problem, but obviously 90% male, that's a lot. I'm not sure if that's anything to do with this question, but in your opinion, what can we do, as crypto people to get more people onboarded and, yeah, sort of widen the audience of what it is at the moment?
Right. I think that's extremely important. I think we ourselves have to do a lot of work on the tribalism that permeates the space. Many of us have done a lot of work and a lot of research to get to the point that we're at. But as a result, we are often quick to dismiss people who have questions we consider, not smart enough. That's going to hurt us every single time. We have to be willing to back up to the Bitcoin white paper and gently and in a friendly manner explain why we believe so much in this technology and why we believe in its ability to actually change society for the better. And I think that's another message that is so often missing when we as individuals try to explain this stuff, is like, okay, like everyone is so focused on getting rich, and that culture of when Lambo, all the rest of it, is half the noise you hear on Twitter sometimes, especially during a bull run. So if that's the only thing we have to advertise to the no coiners, then we are going to look like a casino, and we're often going to act like one as well. So we really need, coherent messaging in terms of why we're involved in the space in the first place. And it has to do with a lot more than our personal bottom lines. One line that I think is kind of appealing that I use a lot when I'm explaining this stuff to people that aren't so familiar is that DeFi can end the skim that centralized institutions enjoy. And this goes back to the fractional reserve question. When centralized entities are able to amalgamate so much capital, it becomes extremely easy for them to skim value off the top. And so if we can paint decentralization and blockchain technology as a way to kind of spend society's assets in a more responsible manner, that to me is a more compelling message than most of what I see on Twitter. And certainly a lot more compelling than folks who are just going to, tweet, have fun staying poor and call it an end of an argument. Those kinds of arguments are not helpful. Maximalism that does not allow for debate and discussion is not helpful. So I think we do need to get our house in order when it comes to the culture sometimes. This may or may not relate to your question concerning the gender imbalance as well. I would venture that typically, this kind of masculine urge to peacock and talk about gambling and not be risk averse might not be so appealing when looked at through different lenses that are more focused upon, more stable asset classes. So, and that's the other thing too, no matter what happens with a Bitcoin, no matter what happens with any particular DeFi protocol, even Ethereum, we have to admit that these are inherently risk on assets for the time being, and that's fine. But anybody who's approaching a no coiner friend and saying this is guaranteed to go up is doing nobody any favors. So many times people shill each other on various tokens that go to nowhere, and then the person's first experience with cryptocurrency is quite negative. So I think a focus on education first would be very, very helpful. Putting the idea of gains into a secondary, tertiary, or even farther lens, I think is important. At the end of the day, we're trying to improve society, at least I am, EverRise is. And if we can focus more upon that element of our progress than the financial remuneration, then I think we'll be in better shape.
Very good answer. I'm just going to echo what someone said in the comments as well. What a great ambassador of not only EverRise, but all of DeFi as well. So well done, Peter. Peter speaks truth and he speaks it eloquently. And I agree, Scott Heinemann. Thank you for that.
We know Scott. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, there you go. And there's some other interesting questions as well. This is quite a big, perhaps a big question, an interesting question. So Egbuna Clement asks, are you perhaps planning on building an Everized blockchain?
Sure. So, Suresh, our CEO, has mentioned that before. I think that is kind of the destiny of any token that makes it more than a few years, is to create its own chain that makes sense. The thing is, you only get one chance to do it. And when you look at other leading chains, Polygon, Avalanche, these are entities that were very well capitalized and had a lot of research take place before they ventured into that space. So the short answer is not anytime soon. But the long answer is very much yes. That is something we would like to deliver. And I suspect it would have something to do with on-chain governance in a way that the eventual Rise coin would function in with regards to voting and on-chain gas, that sort of stuff. It's a little too early to talk about it, but I can't get away with hiding the ball here. We have talked about it in our internal Telegram channels. The Rise community is excited for it, but there's no timeline at all because, again, if we're going to be creating a product, we can't just do it just to say we did. There has to be a clearly identified problem and then a clearly identified solution that we've created. And candidly, we're not close to that now. We're focused on the NFT Marketplace, EverWallet, EverLock, and all the rest of it. So, stay tuned within the next few years, and I suspect you may have a very different answer to that question. But for the time being, we're focused on this year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Obviously, in the question before, you mentioned that education is important perhaps for mass adoption. I think there's a lot of negativity around crypto as well in the media with their focus perhaps, this is taking quite a pessimistic view on it, but with their focus on a lot of scams and people losing money within crypto. Obviously, there's rug pulls that happen, and when something like that does happen, it's a good media story to write and publish. Obviously, people will click on it. And do you think? Well, so yeah, leading on from this, do you think there needs to be more regulation or regulation in general in DeFi, in crypto, or do you think the decentralized nature of it shouldn't essentially need regulation?
Well, regulation is a big word, and it means a lot. In terms of the laws already on the books, when it comes to either a hack or an outright scam where there's a rug pull, there are already laws on the books in almost every country that deal with this stuff. There's fraud, there's theft, there's conversion. So, we're suspicious of government overreach, but we also have many of the tools necessary to combat this stuff already. The other thing people talk about with regard to regulation, they talk about in the United States, the SEC and securities regulation, and whether that would be appropriate. Now, here's the thing. In my view, it is problematic when someone creates a token that doesn't have any purpose and then goes around selling it for no reason, promising people a lot of gains based upon all the hype that they can generate. So, like it or not, these are the kinds of things that securities laws were written to cover. Before the Great Depression in the United States, people were using paper instruments to do exactly the same thing. Now, we can have the conversation whether the SEC should even exist. Maybe it should just be caveat emptor and people can be enabled to do these scams. But the idea behind regulation as it currently stands in a perfect world is that when someone is not outright lying and not outright thieving, but still clearly doing something wrong. In other words, buy this token, it's going to be great, and then pretending that you might do something later. Maybe there's need for more laws to reach that kind of conduct, but I think we've already got the laws that are necessary to reach it, and frankly, in some cases, securities laws are those laws. Now, the answer is, what can we do, as blockchain entrepreneurs? Well, the first lesson would be, don't sell your token directly to the community. That should not be the way it goes, in my view. There shouldn't be centralized entities amalgamating all this capital based upon nothing more than promises in the air. So a lot of people are against regulation, but they're not willing to stand up and say, a lot of this behavior we're engaged in is outright wrong and needs to be corrected. So that does lead to the problem we see in the media, which is always more than happy to jump all over the bad actors. But I think often we are too quick to elevate those bad actors and support them just because they slap Web3 on their names. And then, the Sam Bankman-Frieds of the world are the ones we talk about with reverence because they create centralized exchanges, but we never held them accountable for creating the centralized institution in the first place. So if there were more focus on reasonable growth systems that did not involve centralized amalgamation of capital, then we wouldn't have these problems as much, and there wouldn't be as much need for regulation to touch them, if that makes sense. But, it's no wonder that regulators are licking their chops because there are so many people who are engaging in fraudulent conduct that is covered by the existing laws. So I don't know, I am an attorney, and so I have a lot of respect for the federal courts in the United States. We have to be very suspicious of SEC overreach, but I think the backlash is coming, and I think you may see it from the bench. People are worried about Ripple, and people see certain cases where certain tokens are declared securities. But I think people are not ready for the degree to which the federal judiciary does not like the extension of administrative authority based upon laws that don't specifically touch a subject. In other words, the SEC might have some explaining to do if it ever gets in front of the Supreme Court on this stuff, because they're not going to love the idea that the SEC installed itself as the dictator in charge of this particular asset class. So all of our eyes are on Ripple for now, and we'll see what happens there. But it's going to be a lot for sure. And the last thing I'll say on this point, if you are in the United States, or if you are in a place where this kind of stuff matters, call your representatives, call up their lines and offer to explain to them your view on these various technologies and why you've become a part of it. There is an ongoing conversation, and most people in Congress in the United States don't understand this technology at all. And you might be surprised at how receptive they are to hearing about it. So write letters, make phone calls, do your best if you live in a country where these kinds of communications with government are encouraged. Take advantage of that opportunity for sure.
Brilliant. That was a very, very good answer.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, very good. Another question that I have for you and your brilliant crypto attorney mind. Obviously, recently there's been a few stable tokens that have either experienced volatility, completely collapsed, perhaps like UST. Do you think, to an extent, that the SEC or whatever financial authority it could be in America is secretly wanting this to make the introduction of CBDCs more acceptable? And and sort of on from this as well, what is your view of CBDCs? Will they solve what a lot of people say is ticking time bombs of stable tokens?
Well, they would replace stable tokens, or they might. The problem I have with CBDCs is their unendingly trackable nature. I think they're not going away, and they might come to complement or replace cash. But cash is great because nobody knows when it comes from one person to the next where it initially came from. So the idea that with CBDCs, everybody is going to be able to know how I spent every single dollar that ever passed through my wallet does not make me comfortable. And I think we should stay vigilant on that. Whether the SEC is hoping for crypto to fail, institutions are made up of individuals, right? And individuals come with their own biases. And I bet you there's plenty of people within the SEC who got a bad taste in their mouth from watching one influencer or another and saying this person is full of crap and I hope they fail. So yeah, there's going to be an element of that. If Gensler were put on the spot and asked to say what he thinks, I'm sure he would tell you, no, I don't hope that. I don't need to do an impression. That's not fair. But I'm sure he would tell you that he's not hoping for crypto to fail. He's simply focused on investor protection, which is, of course, what he has to say. But I suspect he believes most of crypto is filled with scammers and thieves, and he probably hopes for some downfall so that he can enlarge his control over it. I think that's a natural impulse for many regulators as well. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin keeps going, and block after block keeps stacking on top of itself. And we will see many changes in DeFi, we'll see many changes in regulation, and we'll see all kinds of calamities, and there will be more scams, and there'll be more theft. But if nothing else, our North Star will continue working as it was intended to work. And the rest of us, whether we're regulators or builders or media outlets, will simply have to catch up to the eternal drumbeat of Bitcoin itself. And that will never fail. So the rest of it is going to just come out in the wash over the next 10 years. And everyone's various biases will play out. But until that time, there's an opportunity to make a mark for yourself. And you guys have done so at BSC News with an awesome publication. I flatter myself to think that we at EverRise have made a mark for ourselves in terms of dispassionate analysis and security. And it's almost like there's a brand new digital landscape out there for us all to carve out our little niche. And no regulator can defeat that. Nobody can stop that. So keep building, in other words.
Very good. That sounded like the sort of closing speech of a film. It was very good.
Thanks,
yeah,
Tom.
I do agree. I've got one last question for you. We are sort of coming up towards the end, and my last question is quite a simple one. Obviously, at the moment, you're on multiple different blockchains. At the top of the website, everrise.com, when you go there, it says 5 chains, 1 supply. Are you planning on expanding to other chains or in the future in general, or other chains in the short term as well?
So that would be a question at the end of the day for the holders of the token. The token now exists on 5 different blockchains, as you've pointed out. We started on BNB, we branched to Ethereum and Polygon, and then Avalanche and Phantom. The liquidity pools are now as stable as can be, considering the risk-on nature of the asset class. And we've been approached as a community by other blockchains that want us to launch there. And we're typically satisfied with the risk exposure we have. I say this as a community member, not as a representative of EverRise. We've got a governance channel where we evaluate proposals and we talk about this stuff. The RISE token is still pretty new. And as such, it doesn't seem like the time for us to splinter our liquidity even, thinner. But if and when a bull market comes, and if and when the RISE token is more renowned, then sure, we'd be comfortable expanding to any credible EVM compatible blockchain, but it would still have to be the decision of the community. And then once there was that critical mass of momentum, we'd have a vote via our smart contract locker known as EverOwn. And then, of course, the element of centralization comes in. Suresh would have to implement those changes. But that's kind of one of those. That question comes up a lot, and I think that more than anything really highlights the kind of line between the centralized entity that creates these various solutions that EverRise has done, and also the decentralized nature of the community that supports those developmental efforts, and then also engages and interacts with the liquidity pools. So if I had to guess, I would imagine, yes, we will expand over time because we'll just become more famous and have more capital. But if you want to know more, or if you have a promising blockchain that you want the Rise token to exist upon, come join our Telegram, come say what's up, and then we can have that conversation.
Definitely. And the best way to get on to your socials, 2 seconds. Well, if you're listening now and you're not already part of EverRise's socials, an easy way to do it is just everrise.com, then go all the way down to the bottom page and then join us on, and they've got all their different socials there. And that's probably the best way to do it. EverRise, EverRise.com. Scroll all the way down, and there they are. I'm pretty sure I'm already part of your socials, but if I'm not, I'll join and say hello there, because you've got a really, really good community. And thank you very much, everyone who's watching and commented some very, very kind words. And yeah, Peter, you're a very, very good speaker and representative for EverRise. I think what you're building at EverRise really addresses things that are needed within crypto. And I look forward to the future of EverRise. Basically, I expect to see you around for a long time. Well, as in EverRise, and also you as a person. Yeah,
thanks, Tom.
For a long time.
Yeah, I hope I survive for a couple of years. Sure.
And is there anything that I've not asked you, or that we've not talked about, that you'd like to raise at all?
Simply the importance of community. We've talked about it a little bit, but I suspect most of the people you've been seeing on the YouTube chat are from the EverRise community. And it sounds a little cheesy to say it sometimes, but that needs to be the essence of any DeFi protocol, right? Like, so many of the DeFi tokens that launched in the bull run the order of operations was token first, and then let's create a community around that. And EverRise was the same way, by the way. You know, we're not different, but that makes it a lot harder to build that community, because then everybody's focused on financial gain, and then everybody's kind of upset about price, and everybody's worrying about how to build something. In my view, in 10, 20 years, when DeFi has finally made it, it will be a question of community first. And you'll already know the people that you're pooling your assets with. You know, it might be people from your hometown, people that are all fans of Arsenal or anything like that. And then you can see DeFi communities that have a reason to exist beyond financial gain. So I want to give a specific shout out to the EverRise community for building itself in a way that may not have been efficient, but was just wonderful. And now we have hundreds of friends that we can come to and talk about these issues. You know, you say I'm a good speaker, but everything I've said has been something that I've honed with the community. We've had these conversations on Twitter Spaces. We've had these conversations on Telegram. And at the end of the day, DeFi works best when it's a way of like improving your own life in ways that are not strictly financial. So shout out to the EverRise community for enabling that above all else. And the rest of it, in my view, will sort itself out.
Fantastic. Well, thank you once again for your time. And it's been incredibly interesting talking to you, obviously, about EverRise and the wider, crypto ecosystem in general. And yeah, I hope to maybe, I don't know, in a couple of months down the line or something, chat again, because it's been really, really interesting. So thank you very much, Peter. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'm sure we'll keep in contact in our Telegram group. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Shout out to the BSC News community. You guys are great, and we'll see you around. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Peter. Well, there we go. Thank you very, very much once again, listeners, for tuning in. Thank you very much as well for your really supportive comments. Obviously, we can see them come up on screen. We try to answer as many questions as we can. So thank you. It's a wonderful community. We are live every weekday at 7 p.m. UTC on our Twitter, and also obviously our YouTube, which you're watching from now. And we have guests on probably, well, a lot of the time. I want to say the majority of the time. And yeah, we have a lot of guests on, and obviously we had EverRise today, which was fantastic. But yeah, live every day, 7 p.m. UTC on our Twitter and also YouTube, discussing the latest news, guests, that sort of thing. Anyway, it's coming up to an hour. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll be joining your community very, very soon, if I'm not already in there, and saying a hello. But thank you very much for tuning in, and hopefully see you again very, very